permission to not feel responsible for someone else's desire, right? So for people socialized as women, and girls get hit on by men a lot, there's this sort of cultural obligation to take care of them. And that's what we're taught. I get to give people permission. You know what? You don't have to be responsible for my desire. And we actually practice it. We practice what does it feel to have someone come at you with their desire, and then they practice witnessing, but not feeling responsible and actually creating the barrier. Okay, I can witness you. I can actually receive. Yeah, I'm juicy. I'm desirable. And I don't have to be responsible for your desire. Tap into it.
Tapping into the intuition.
Hi there. Welcome to the Tap Intuit Podcast. I'm here with Jessica Langley. Jessica has lived a creative life from the beginning, it seems, right out of grad school, winning the Fulbright in your international studies. I could start anywhere, and for that reason, I'm going to pause and ask you, were you raised inside the art before you chose it?
Both of my parents are artists. I was raised by my mom, and she's a painter. So I grew up going to art centers and in ceramic studios and in her painting studio, and we were always around art and going to gallery openings, and it was just like part of my life. So yeah, it was like definitely raised in art.
Early on, you were circling the same images in art in terms of your focus: animals, rituals, wilderness. And there was a line between the domestic and the animalistic, if you will. And I really appreciated what I got to witness. But what's most fascinating is the serious body of art that you created with nature. Most specifically at UCCS, I saw your exhibit, and I'm going to not get the name correctly, but I know it starts with an H.
Hymenophore.
Thank you so much. And just seeing the way that you displayed that art and the textiles, but also the intention behind it. I would love just to hear in your own words after reading about it.
That body of work, so what you're describing are the paintings of styrofoam.
Yes.
And then the 3D animation.
Right.
Yeah. The 3D animation was this like 3D scan of an oyster mushroom growing in space. So as I was growing this oyster mushroom off of like a spawn bag, I was also scanning it in 3D so that I could create the stop motion animation in 3D of this like blossoming, goddess figure basically.
Yeah.
And I felt like this figure was very feminine, and the lamellae, which is the description of the gills, the sort of labial like form, just felt so soft and inviting, and like also this big release. And the way that I showed this in the exhibition was like this giant projection to kind of be this sort of beacon guiding us. And then the paintings were still lifes of styrofoam, blue polystyrene, and the still lives were created in a way to suggest architecture, landscape, and this sort of like vastness of this endless like landscape of polystyrene.
Yeah.
And it was, the color was, so that we made this during COVID, the color was COVID mask blue. And I was just immersed in that color. I mean, I felt like we all were immersed in that color.
Absolutely.
And so the power, I think, well, the part of it is also that like this mushroom, the oyster mushroom, has the ability to break down polystyrene.
Right.
And so for me, like this work, I had been interested in mycology and working with making handmade paper from fungi and kind of doing like different things with mushrooms and combining that in the work. Mm-hmm. But that research and that interest gave me hope for the future. And that was the big idea behind that show.
I think one of the reasons that this piece of work, among all of the ones that you did though, was fascinating because what you mentioned with your work with mycology, right? And you're on the board of the Pikes Peak Mycology Society.
Board member
right?
at large now. But yeah.
All right. And also, it's this through thread between nature and your art and how really your use of the materials in that project just showed that we're a part of all of it.
Yeah.
And I loved that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
But do you have a relationship with fungi from child time, or where did you discover the mushroom?
You're asking about my spark shroom, like the spark bird, but spark shroom. I did not have a relationship with nature very much at all as a kid. I mean, as a little kid, I grew up playing in the Rocky Mountains with my dad at the cabin. He lived in a cabin in Allen's Park, and one of my most prominent childhood memories is the smell of the hot pine in the forest, like, you know, the duff, like that's like the scent memory, and playing in the tree house and all that stuff. But then a huge span of time goes by, and I grew up skiing, so like I would always be outside and stuff, but I would never go hiking.
Sure.
Or definitely not look at plants or animals or flora, fauna, or fungi. I would never do that until I started going to visit my dad in the Adirondacks and my stepmother, and her grandfather built this cabin. So it's over 100 years old, this cabin in the Adirondacks, and there's this collection of mushrooms in all of the cabins that were like the original kind of like cabins that were built at the time. So they were all these employees of GE that lived in Schenectady, and they came up here and they all built these little cabins, and they were sort of like the first in the area to have electricity and stuff. Wow. But there's this tradition in the Adirondacks of finding an artist conch and then writing, you know, like Rebecca and Jessica hiked Snowy Mountain on July 5th, 1972. And you can carve into this mushroom, and then you let it dry, and it petrifies and stays forever. So there's mushrooms in this cabin that date back to the 20s and 30s. And all of the cabins that are the old cabins that have been passed down through generations have these mushrooms. And it's really amazing. Not only can you see this kind of visual and written history, but it's in an object, but it's a mushroom. So we started doing that. We just started looking for this one kind of mushroom, and that was literally the first time I ever started looking at a mushroom. I never even like noticed them ever.
Sure.
And when we started looking at them, we were like, that one's different than this one. This one didn't work. Why isn't this one not working? This conch didn't work, and this one did. So like, what's the difference? And that was really the first time that I started looking for mushrooms.
Yeah.
And then from then, fast forward many years, and I was at an art gallery in New York City, and the art was really bad. And a friend was there, and we were like, well, what did you do today? He's like, well, I went mushroom foraging with the New York Mycological Society. And we're like, what is that? Like, tell me more. And he starts opening the guest book, and he starts just like drawing and diagramming like how to identify mushrooms, drawing the sort of basics of mushroom identification. And we're like,
yeah,
oh my God, I want to go. And so the next weekend we went with him and got to meet Gary Linkoff, who wrote the the North American Guide to, or the Audubon Guide to North American Mushrooms, and he was president of the New York Mycological Society, and he's a huge prolific figure in the mycological world, and extremely inspiring, an excellent teacher, and he could make everything seem exciting. I feel so honored to be able to have learned from this man, Gary Linkoff. And we just went on a foray in Central Park.
What?
And it was like, wow, there's all of these amazing edible mushrooms, and in addition to weeds and different edible plants and things that you can just forage. And we collected a little basket of things and went back to Brooklyn and picked up some bread and eggs and cooked this amazing meal. And I was like, this is incredible. And it just keeps going. Every new thing that I learned, I was like, this is the most interesting and exciting thing I've ever learned. You know, and then I got to see Paul Stamets speak at NYU when his book, Mycelium Running, came out. And, you know, it was just snowballing. I mean, that was more than probably 12, 15 years ago.
It sounds like a loaded pun, but mushroom as a medium, being your discovery, is just crazy to me because it's an art medium, but also to me it's like a medium.
It's a medium. Yeah, exactly, for sure.
I don't want to skate over the fact that you built a serious body of work, because you did. And getting the accolades with the Fulbright and getting to travel, I just, as a fangirl of travel and of art, please, can you just give us some insight into from Iceland to Ireland?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time in Europe and have been able to travel. There was different projects that I was involved with. So Iceland and the Fulbright was right out of grad school. And I was very interested in how we depicted nature. How are we using it?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And nature as a subject, but then also an object. And when I was in Iceland, I was looking at this very beautiful, sublime landscape that is being harnessed for things like geothermal energy or aluminum smelting. And there's a lot of hydroelectric power dams and stuff like that. And it's considered like very green energy there. And then they're storing that energy in aluminum and by smelting aluminum and then exporting that back to India or China or wherever it goes to become other things.
Right.
And then also like how the landscape is being written about and depicted in art. And there's just some incredible artists and writers thinking about, I think his name's Egilson, this painter, but he just this incredibly huge paintings, very, very up close of moss. And so it's this massive, and they're just very thick and juicy paintings. And when you see the surface of it, you don't necessarily read it as moss. It's not necessarily a photographic representation in terms of painting or super representational, but when you stand back, you can then sort of read this like texture. And so there's things like that versus artists taking like all of the trash that they have to collect because they believe they export their trash.
Oh, wow.
They have landfills. So they compact it into these massive blocks. Massive blocks, right? Yeah. And so there's one artist whose name I should remember, but I can't, photographs these massive blocks, and you can see the different brand names of different stuff. And it's like, wow, it's just this collection of all of our trash, you know? And he did these other great photographs of the snow removal piles of snow that, and the way he framed it just made them look like these mountains, you know, or icebergs. Just beautiful representation of different ways that like our impact.
Right. And I also saw, like me, you're into the mythology as well. So we're on Iceland still, and I can't skip all of the fanaticism there with, is it trolls? Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking about in the waterfalls? Yeah.
Totally.
Could you educate me further on that? Okay. Is that a part of the art, I guess, is the first question.
It has entered in. Yeah, there's been a little bit of like interest in the fairies and interest in this like hidden people of Iceland. And so there's different lore. One is the hidden people that live in the rocks.
Right.
And then there's also the Yule lads, which is like a Christmas time lore tradition. Yeah. And then there's like the different trolls that sort of live in the mountains. So there's like in a town called Skagastrand, there's a mountain called Spaukonafell. And Spaukonafell, means soothsayer. Spaukona is soothsayer. Fell is mountain. So soothsayer is mountain. And so the legend is that if you were a virgin who's never learned the word of God and you hiked to the top of the mountain without looking back, you could have Thordis's gold. And Thordis is the soothsayer that lives in the mountain.
Oh, nice.
And so there's lots of like stories about, you know, this mountain here, you know. And there's the Yule lads. I mean, I'm not a scholar of Icelandic folklore, but I did attend many lectures by scholars of Icelandic folklore and just like consume, you know, because it's so wonderful. And, you know, there's just like all these legends, and I think that kind of shapes like how you relate to something.
Agreed.
You know, like you think about like, well, okay, if I'm going to climb this mountain, like how am I going to climb this mountain? Who am I climbing this mountain? You know? Yeah,
I appreciate that. And I think that the lore and the mythology is so important, especially for art, because when you're looking at art as the way how each culture has held it, I think about Ireland and I think about, you know, the fairy doors and the things that they would set out. And it has to also be a protective incantation, not so much against the woo, and I'm woo, but more so like, don't go there and damage the land.
Yeah.
And a way to keep people
reverence.
Off of. Right.
Yeah. Reverence, respect.
Correct.
Also your awareness of how you're behaving in this place. I remember once in Ireland, we entered some fairy ring, and the lore was that you could not use any mechanical things, and we took a photo.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden, all of these cows from the pastures just came at us. And we were surrounded by these cows, and we're just like, oh boy, let's get out of here. Yeah.
I believe it.
Absolutely.
I believe it. Yeah, absolutely.
There is a waterfall that supposedly is a hidden people city, and it flows upward instead of down. And I went to it and I saw it, and it certainly does flow upward. So I think like, part of it is like there's magic here, and that it's okay to believe in magic. I think that's like another thing that like, why not?
Yes, why not? I mean, it's magical that we're just here.
Yeah.
We all met at the same time on a certain timeline. I think it's all magic to me. Your art always studied the wild thing in animals and what we project onto them. Now you work with the body, which is in some ways the most animal part of all of us. The part that shame teaches us to tame. Were you studying instinct all along, just through a different medium first?
I've never thought about it like that. I love that interpretation. I think reflecting back, I think I was thinking about how are we nature? We're not separate from it. We are part of it. We're in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that working with the body and going back into our animal selves is a kind of unlearning of the patriarchy that has taught us that we are separate from nature.
Pachamama has taught me so much, and I'm grateful for folks like you who are tied to the earth and to all of its beings. And the exploration that you've done, there were some pieces that were challenging to sit with. You talked about the different parts of the animals that you would use. Was there a piece that you crafted that was challenging for you?
My work has always been a little uncomfortable.
That's what I like about it.
It's a little disconcerting, a little uncomfortable. Probably why I haven't had a lot of commercial success is because people want to think about nice things, right? And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm doing.
Your challenge is a good thing, and in a beautiful way.
Yeah, with the animal, you're referring to the still lives from grad school. A lot of those things were found. Those pieces of fur or skulls were just like things that I found. And I think in a way it was like, I felt like it was a little bit of honoring them.
Agreed.
And giving them like a second life, like kind of a reanimation.
Yeah.
You know, the work that you're talking about are prints. They were photographs of little still lives. They were printed with a giclée printer, which is a water-based ink. And the ink, so that means that I could take water and bleed the ink. So I would go back into the drawing and kind of animate it in a way and like bring my hand back into it.
Right.
I think my interest was more in like the artist hand rather than how the digital, which is a removal of the artist's hand, can be reanimated or brought back into a physical sensory experience, which is also like more what I'm in my path now.
Let's move into where your focus is right now, where your passion is right now, because I was introduced to you last year as Jessica the Sex Witch, which I was fangirling over.
I studied with Somatica Institute, and that process of learning about what my body is doing, because for years, I mean, all of this work you can see in my art career, how heady it is. I had a lot of ideas about things, but it wasn't a fully embodied work, and I think that was a big shift for me. When I started actually learning about like, what is my body doing? What does a boundary feel like? What does consent feel like? How does my turn on, innate erotic juiciness, how does that pleasure feel, right? And when I can, what does it feel like to be accepted in that and seen in that, right? Witnessed and celebrated. All of these wonderful things. And the coaching work that I'm doing, I'm so excited about it. Every day when I work with clients, I get to see people learn about themselves and just inch their way towards a more authentic, more expressed, more free life.
We say that you're helping them give themselves permission.
Absolutely. It's absolutely permission. It's a lot of permission. The permission to not feel responsible for someone else's desire, right? So for people socialized as women, and girls get hit on by men a lot, you know, and there's this sort of cultural obligation to take care of them. And that's what we're taught. And so I get to give people permission. You know what? You don't have to be responsible for my desire. And we actually practice it. So we practice what does it feel to have someone come at you with their desire, and then they practice witnessing but not feeling responsible and actually creating the barrier. Okay, I can witness you. I can actually receive. Yeah, I'm juicy. I'm desirable, and I don't have to be responsible for your desire. Yeah. It's very empowering, and I feel like I tapped into something that I'm really naturally very good at.
We're having voices that are speaking about it.
And it's just a lot of unlearning. It's a lot of unlearning.
Absolutely. And one thing that I love that you offer that I've been following for a while now is your cuddle puddles, which it's consent through something bodily and felt rather than a rule book. And what I would like to ask you, what changes for people when they learn that consent as a kind of intelligence that lives between two nervous systems?
Yeah. Okay. The cuddle puddle is a platonic intimacy experience, meaning that people are coming to experience touch and intimacy without the pressures of sex or romance. In order to create this safe space, because we're strangers essentially coming into a space, and in order to create this container, it's really important that I bring people into what is the felt sense of a boundary? What is the felt sense of consent? They learn what safety is in their body. The difference between enduring and actually getting what you want. The process of slowing it down and saying, okay, here's my personal space, right? The boundary between you and me. Let's say it's right here. And I get to actually invite you towards me and pause right at that moment and then choose, okay, now you can enter, and wait until my body feels ready. And that's a really powerful exercise to just be like, oh, that's what readiness feels. That's what safety feels like. That's what it feels like to allow versus doing things out of obligation or social norms. There's so many different practices that we do, but this is about figuring out, okay, what is my body actually needing? Listening to the body, okay, it's needing movement, or my neck hurts, I need a pillow, or, oh, you know what, I would really love a foot rub or a head scratch, and would anybody be willing to give me that? You know, and just like naming the need, which is vulnerable, and also takes some sense of awareness of, okay, here's what I actually need and want, and then asking for it and putting it out there. And
we need healthy touch.
Yeah. What changes for people, I think, is piece about knowing what safety feels like.
Yeah. I think you described that really well. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And that was a great example, too. Thank you for guiding us through that. I think it is beautiful offering and a nice way for people to have an entry into intimacy in a way they didn't know existed. You've earned real credentials in each of these fields, and I don't want to undermine that. But I do want to ask you about intuition being the heartbeat of all of your skill sets, really. And so would you say that you are an intuitive?
I think this is something that I have really been leaning into with the coaching and with the somatic work, is actually understanding my deeper sense of knowing and trusting it and paying attention to when it's present. I don't think I ever considered that as part of my life up until recently, and only recently have I been like, oh, yeah, I'm very intuitive. Part of that is like a trauma response of being hypervigilant, right? And always needing to monitor to make sure things are safe, or making sure that like there's still connection. And so that is like this sort of little superpower that I've been able to harness into this work. And I feel really proud of that.
Yeah. I would be too. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. It can be a lot sometimes. To always be aware, you know?
I do know.
Like, is everyone comfortable?
Yes.
You know?
Or what just shifted and who was that?
Yes,
now I need
exactly.
to scan the whole room again.
Yeah, and whose energy is this, right? I read this very, like, self-helpy book, speaking of, like, woo, but it's called The Empath's Survival Guide.
Oh.
Highly recommend. There's some very practical tools in there about, okay, here's your energy and your anxiety. Here's mine, and here I am, right? Part of the somatic work is getting grounded in yourself, right? We understand getting centered in self before we share it with others.
And having guides and folks that we can look to who know how to do that too is a good example, because you do have this grounding presence about you, even though you offer such spaciousness. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been a learned skill. How to practice attunement, also for others to know what they need. Like the way a mother intuits a baby's needs. I've had to really work on that, because it's easy to get swept away in my own shit sometimes too, and like we all project on other people, and so it's a skill that I've been working on and developing.
I love this idea of fostering intimacy and permission, and I'd love to know, because I know you work with men as well.
Yeah.
Do you find that they find comfort in how open you are with that, or do you find that they're even more closed inward than women?
I think that my openness within my comfort in myself, that people respond differently to that. depending on their background. And I wouldn't say that there's any one particular, it's not gendered necessarily. And I think with men, and they see my comfort and my confidence, which is also something that is practiced. I don't always have confidence, and I have to be really grounded in order to do that. It's funny. I actually don't know what they think of it. I mean, some people, I think, find it comforting because they're coming to me because they want to be more self-expressed. I think also in the context of sex coaching with men is that the safety comes in that I can protect my boundaries, so that when I give them permission to be free to have desire, they can have desire, they can be passionate, they can be animalistic even, and I will protect my boundaries. Conversations around consent are really narrow. And I think it's important to understand consent as a non-binary process. And that means that it's not just because I ask you and then you say yes that we're finished with that conversation, right?
Right.
It isn't about active and passive or this enthusiastic yes, because a lot of times people who are people pleasers will say yes to avoid conflict. And there's so many layers to power differentials and power in terms of sex, money, gender, social class, race, physical size, professional power, etc. And then there's more systemic issues of power. And then there's just information and capacity. And do we even understand that we have boundaries and deserve to have them? And so it's like really about attunement to self and attunement to others. So as person asking, it's my responsibility to pay attention to your situation, as well as it is your responsibility to check in with yourself.
And to voice where you're at. And I know we had talked off camera a couple weeks ago about just the passion for helping adolescents understand consent and boundaries, which that is near and dear to my heart as a mother of middle school and high school and boys, right? I want them to understand all of these things. I think it's a really worthy topic of discussion.
I hope there are more opportunities to talk about consent with that age group in our lifetime.
And for girls to know that there's no shame in expression. Too. I love that you are bringing all this insight into our community in the ways that you're doing it already, the ways that you have paved the path in your art for people to have a path to you and into the work that you're doing now.
I'm hosting at Telluride Mushroom Festival this summer on Wednesday, August 12th, I believe. This is a mini retreat. It's not a foray because we're not going out to like hunt for mushrooms necessarily, but I'm calling it a half-day foray. But we're going to foray in the wood. I'm leading a group of people to experience what it's like to think of the earth and mushrooms as our lover. And instead of Mother Earth, we're thinking of lover Earth, right?
I love that.
This mycosexuality has to do with how we can allow our eroticism to be present through our sensual experience of this place and of mushrooms, basically. There's different components or guided meditation and different authentic relating, and then there's going to be different kind of activities that we do that are about how we engage and interact and express ourselves while we're in the forest. When we allow our eroticism into that space, we can deepen our pleasure and also deepen this relationship that we have with this place or this fungus here, this leaf here, that rose bush over there, right? How we can not just see it as an object, but as like something that we're in a relationship.
Yeah, I love that. What other ways can folks find you and know how to work with you? And I'll definitely link all of the goodies that I found below in the show notes.
You can catch me at one of my different events, always trying to host different offerings and coming up with new ways because I love teaching. That's one of the reasons why I really like leading events and doing, workshops and stuff. But if you want to work with me individually, you can contact me through my website and set up a free discovery call where I can answer your questions, and we'll have 15 minutes to kind of talk about what you're seeking from coaching, and you have time to ask me any questions, and we can just kind of brainstorm a little bit about what working together might look like. And so that coaching container is really like a relationship laboratory where we enter into this space together and figure out like what is working between us. And we can play with that in a material of intimacy, because we think of intimacy as the prize, right? That's what we're going for in life.
Yeah,
you know,
the whole experience.
This is the whole reason why we're doing what we're doing. When we go into this relationship laboratory, we can actually practice like what is working and what is not working, and then learn real skills that you can go off into your life and practice with your different relationships that you're in.
Absolutely. And I love that you do it. You do solo coaching, but you also do couples, correct?
Yeah, I work with couples, solo people, poly tools. There's a lot of really hard stuff with couples that come up, people that are in long-term relationships and they've kind of had this bad death, or maybe there's been a rupture and that needs repairing, and it's
So
hard
we
to
don't
bounce
talk
back
about
from.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's hard to learn the tools. And we can go into couples therapy and endlessly rehash the same things, but the reason why rumination keeps happening is that that person isn't being seen or felt. They're not receiving the empathy. And so that's one of the main things I work with couples around.
It's huge. The roadblocks are endless, and I'm grateful that we have you to help guide not only individuals, but couples and all of the relationships that life has to offer, because I don't think we talk about intimacy even in friendships, right? And I think that platonic intimacy is really important as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jessica, I could talk to you all day, and I am so grateful that you made the time to come on the podcast. I know that you have a really busy schedule, and I'm just really thrilled to have you a part of the collective and to be able to let folks know all the wonderful things that you're doing.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really honored.
Until next time, because there will be a next time. And folks, make sure that you check out Jessica and all of her offerings in the show notes below. And until next time, find some way to tap into it for yourself. Take care.
Thank you.